The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
You're now about to witness the truth.
it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
And there you go. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is primary, New York primary. We should be getting results coming in the next half hour or so. So we're going to keep our eyes and our ears to the streets for that, to see what's coming down the pipe in New York. We pretty much already know what's happening on the Republican side. Donald Trump is thrashing everybody. I want to say everybody, even though it's only two people, but he is thrashing Kasich and Cruz. He's beating Kasich by 30 points, and Kasich is beating Cruz by like 12 points. He is demolishing them, and I really, I can't imagine that New York actually loves Donald Trump as much as they probably hate Ted Cruz. So we'll be keeping an eye and see how that actually pans out. Someone shot me a link earlier today. It's just okay with like 0.1% in. He's been declared the winner of the Republican primary in New York. So I don't know. Should we give Donald Trump? Let's give Donald Trump the congratulatory fanfare, right? Donald Trump, ladies and gentlemen, has been declared the winner of the primary in New York. With 0% reporting, it's already been called for Donald Trump. So we'll keep our eyes on the exact percentages so we can see how many delegates. I completely forgot how they allocate delegates in New York for the Republican Party. So somebody, I'm sure, will send me a reminder shortly. So we'll keep our eyes and ears on that. But that's to be expected, right? He was up 30 points. No way he was going to lose New York. It's just a question of by how much will he win. So we'll keep an eye on that. Democrat side, however, it is turning out to be pretty interesting and pretty exciting. I just got a link from about Harlem turning out for Bernie Sanders. I shared the link somewhere, and now I can't even remember where I shared the link. So I'll find that link and bring it back. Noah, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
Doing good. So let's do something real quick, Noah. On your microphone.
Yes.
On the game, I want you to turn that gain to 10 o'clock.
Like this?
That's perfect. I can see it.
Awesome.
That's going to give you the best results.
No, I think I knocked it when I was getting excited. I think I grabbed the microphone and flipped it over.
Well, you were dealing with some stuff that was so there's two separate issues going on today. You unpacked one. The one that's the most troubling to me is overnight. Yesterday it was 63,000.
And now it's doubled.
It's 126,000.
It doubled. Like, how do they miscount?
How do you have this? And you hit on something. So there's a separate issue going on with a lot of independent voters upset. Part of me agrees with everything you said last segment, and part of me doesn't. More agrees with you. Like, you should know what's going on.
I appreciate that we don't agree all the time. That makes it interesting.
Yeah. Like, I agree that they should be cognizant of what's going on. It's kind of a microcosm, right, of why there's a problem in the first place. You could rage against the machine all you want, but if you don't ever participate in the machine, then you really give power to the machine to do whatever the hell it wants to do. And you have to be able to participate enough to shape it enough so that when you get involved, you're not disenfranchised. So I do blame a lot of independent voters for not knowing that this was a closed primary, right? That's number one. And then two, that the cutoff date. But that's the small story.
Right.
And that's what makes me mad, is that people are focusing on this small story of the independent voters versus focusing on the real story of systematic disenfranchisement of 126,000 people, not across the state of New York, but in Brooklyn, New York. And that's the thing that really is pissing me off. And to see the condescension, to see people, and when I say people, I mean Democratic establishment types, dismissing this as frivolous or conflating it, right? Conflating it with the handful of independent voters who are upset. They're mixing the two, and I don't think they realize how condescending and how elitist it is and how dismissive it is to those 126,000 people who were registered and now found themselves unable to vote today, or having to go like Michael Solomon going through hell just to get a chance to vote. What do you think of Noah?
Well, I really appreciated Michael's I really appreciate his firsthand account. Like, listen to him on the show yesterday, and then I know he shot you some information, and we had a Twitter exchange earlier because I wanted to check and just see how their day was going. That's really frustrating. And luckily, he like I said, luckily he had the time to go through all the hoops that he had to go through to get his court order and then help his mother out. So many people would not have had time to do that. There are so many people who had to get out there and actually, there are numbers starting to come in from the city.
Numbers coming in. We have 0.7% reporting, 107 precincts out of 15,000 reporting, 60% for Hillary Clinton and 40% for Bernie Sanders. That has not been called yet, so we're keeping an eye on that. Numbers for the Republican side are coming in. 68 point. I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh. 68.6% for Donald Trump and 17% for John Kasich and 13.6% for Ted Cruz. Donald Trump is kicking ass and taking names in New York. Why when even if you're a Republican in New York, you're arguably, unless certain parts are obvious, I'm talking about like New York City, you're obviously more liberal. Do people just realize that Donald Trump is, I don't know, I don't even want to, what do you think? Why are people going to Donald Trump in New York considering how crazy his platform has been?
Because I'm thinking that there are people in New York that don't necessarily believe that his platform is that crazy. Or on the flip side, there are people in New York who don't mind that his platform is what it is. I mean, quite honestly, like the movie The Siege, I won't say that it's one of my favorite Denzel movies. If you guys don't know The Siege, it actually came out before September 11th. This is one of the movies that actually got taken off the shelf. Because remember, like when September 11th happened, they didn't play a lot of music. So like Outkast's Bomb Over Baghdad didn't play. The Siege is one of the movies that you couldn't find anywhere. Anyway, in The Siege, there's a terrorist attack. There's a terrorist cell. Denzel, I believe, is an FBI agent. Yeah. And they actually round up Muslim youth fitting the description, so to speak, right, and have them under observation in these large areas within Brooklyn in the movie. When September 11th happened, I was really actually surprised that did not happen. I mean, we are aware that there have been, heightened surveillance and stuff of, Muslim Americans post 9/11, but the level of vitriol coming out of even some liberal sectors of New York was very, very interesting. Right. So it's not entirely surprising. And at the end of the day, I really think some people just really don't care because Donald Trump makes money for his friends. So he has a lot of friends in New York. There are a lot of people who keep claiming they're not friends of his, like Russell Simmons, like the Clintons.
Doing good and damn well.
But they apparently have been hanging out with him for years. So
we've been joined by Nick Nolan, economist, brainiac, newest member to the live show of the Progressive Army. Nick, how's it going, man? Oh, man, come on, man. What did I do? I don't think it's me. I think it's you. Nick? No, we don't hear you. And I was about to say, we just tested it out earlier. How's it going, man?
Yeah, I was thinking everybody hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you loudly and clear, man. What's on your mind? Yeah.
I mean, as of right now, I don't know if anybody else is feeling this, but I feel cheated. I know it's not even all the way out yet, but with the purge going on, with issues that have been centered in New York happening the way they are, I'm sorry. I don't want to sound like a sore loser, but
it's okay.
If we lose by a wide margin, I'm gonna point to saying the election hasn't been fair. And I'm sorry, I know nobody wants to hear that, but when you look at all these issues that have been going on in state after state after state,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's only the conclusion you can come up with, and we'll never really know if he truly won or lost in a fair election. That's just something that we'll always have to hold.
Mhm.
I'm sorry, dude. I just walked away from the computer to fix something. You feel free to keep talking while I plug my headphones back in.
To get to where you guys were talking about Donald Trump, I don't honestly understand the inclination towards Donald Trump, but I believe his rude, in your face nature kind of speaks to something in New York that a lot of people identify with. Regardless of what he's saying, that the belief that somebody identifies with you or is one of you is probably stronger than any policy position you can take for the most part. For most people, especially the uninformed voter or the person that just doesn't pay attention to politics very much. So I can see where maybe that kind of lends itself to them leaning towards Trump. The same way here in Texas, we had a tendency to lean towards Cruz, and it makes no sense to me, but I can walk down the street and have a conversation with somebody, and half of them would not understand why there's such a large separation between church and state. So that's just the nature of the different demographics in the state.
Let me read some of these results coming out on a borough by borough level. So if I'm reading this correctly, it's 61.9% to 38.1% for Hillary, 66% in Brooklyn, and 52% in NYC. I'm sorry, okay, no, here we go. 52 to 47% in NYC for Hillary Clinton, 60 to 40. I'm going to read that the best I can, but if you could structure that a little bit better for me, I could read it better. But the one that steps out to me the most, stands out the most, is the Bronx is leaning towards Hillary Clinton at the moment of 65%. So it looks like, I don't know what it looks like yet. Let's keep our eye on it. It's still, too early to call. You were saying something, Nick, that made. Oh, so yeah, you feel like you've been slighted. I'm glad somebody is going to represent that position, because I'm not going to represent that position. I'm not going to argue that this campaign hasn't been fair. Besides the obvious, it hasn't been fair, but I'm not going to argue that, and I'll tell you why I'm not. Because we got to change it, and we're playing their game. And if you go in knowing you're playing their game, you have to be better than them at their game, right?
Well,
go ahead.
Let's be honest. Nobody knew the extent. Like this level of voter disenfranchisement is completely beyond the pale. It's almost as if everything before this has been like almost like a practice session, and now it's starting to get to like, okay, they've really got it down where it's not even subtle anymore. Before it was subtle, with the exceptions of like Florida in 2000, right? And what was that?
2000.
Ohio in 2004.
It
Ohio
happened,
in 2004
in
was
Florida in 2000. I was purged in Florida in 2004. I couldn't vote for the presidential election because they were doing the purge then. I agree that the games have been played. I think it's you don't wake up with double and nobody saw this coming. That type of thing is like, even if it's an electronic error, what the hell were your people doing to not notice 63,000 people between last night and today, right? It doubled between last night and today. So even if it's not someone going in and manually or running the algorithm and disenfranchising people, and it's just a malfunction, it's still negligence, because someone should have been watching this prior to tonight. So I give you this, but it's still at the same time, I'm not surprised, because you're going up against the most powerful political family since the Kennedys, if you ask me.
Well, yeah, and like the reasons for the purge, like, people get removed because they're dead or because they didn't update their registration or whatever the case may be, right? But there were like last night when we were talking about it, right? Like, of that 60,000, the majority, there was no valid reason provided. Like, they weren't even sure why they weren't even on the rolls now. Now we have double that amount, so presumably we have double the people that it's just not clear why they weren't counted. And like I said earlier, you have somebody like my grandmother who's recorded, who's deceased, who's been buried for 3 years now, and she's still on the rolls. Like, there's, to some extent, there's no rhyme or reason, and we know this happens. So what I'm saying earlier today about people being up in arms and outraged, it's like, I'm a little cynical, right? Because we do know what happens. Like, you yourself, you just mentioned, like, you were purged in Florida in 2004. We know this happens. This happens every election cycle for one reason or another. And I do agree with Nick that, but maybe it's not that it's more subtle. Maybe it's just that people aren't paying attention. Like, I think that as people who are trying to vote for Bernie Sanders, we're hyper aware of what is going on in the system now because we do see so many different attempts to limit him, right? So, like, I caution people about making everything about Hillary Clinton trying to cheat people because arguably, you know, when we talk about this stuff affects people who would support her too. Now, they're not rushing to say anything about it, though, because lower voter turnout benefits, you know, the establishment candidate. I mean, that's just because they have all the information, they have all the TV coverage and stuff like that. So if you have a smaller amount of people that are voting, more than likely they're going to be voting for her. When you have all these new people, all these other people, I mean, so I agree, but then but like I said, I'm a little cynical. Like I understand people are outraged and, oh my God, this is a travesty. Okay, it's been happening. I'm glad you're aware this has been happening now. So what are we going to do about it? Because, okay, whatever happens tonight, but we're still having this issue going forward. And if they're investigating in New York, who is going to be around to make sure that that's a fair investigation when you have the people involved are all for one particular candidate as well? Like,
and that's why that's one of the reasons why I'm against. I can't say I'm against. The jury is still out for me on Bernie or bust because it's going to cause a level of disengagement from this party that has a stranglehold on at least a strong 30% of our population, right? Of the voting population. Just probably our population, depending on who's voting that year, right? That number fluctuates. But they have a grip on half of the people that are voting. And without sufficient engagement, you're going to repeat this cycle again in 2 years and in 4 years. And if you putting all of your lock and stock into the idea of the Green Party is pretty much repeating history. You know, the Green Party has been around for a long time, and I appreciate them. I like what they represent. I like probably 90% of their politics. However, disengaging from this process is exactly what gave people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz the green light to run forward with everything that we've been complaining about right now. And so just throwing your cards on the table and saying, I'm not going to participate, or I'm doing and this is just me. Like, again, I'm not trying to convince you to do anything else, but this is my show, and I'm just expressing how I feel. I feel as though this should increase engagement, that this should make people go to their local precincts and in droves and run out everybody who had anything to do with the 2016 election. Just take over this entire party and just run them all out, because if you realize there's so many opportunities for you to have an impact, but disengaging will repeat this, and in 8 years there'll be a new revolution that falls flat because we disengaged when we should have engaged more. That's just me.
Okay, so there's two problems with your argument here that I take issue.
Hold on there. Okay, you can take issue. There's no problem with my argument, but you feel free to take issue with it. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first point is that a revolution must go through the Democratic Party, and that's the only way you can accomplish it. See, this is a part of accepting somebody's narrative that there are only two parties and you can't do anything to change that. As of right now, you know, you can say what you want about the Green Party, but it is there, it has infrastructure, and guess what? It's on the ballot in most states. It's on the ballot in most states.
Nationwide.
Huh?
When's the last time they got 5% nationwide?
Oh, I won't deny that it's an uphill battle. However, what I was saying is, it's there for you as a recourse. Because if you just try to take over the Democratic Party, they don't care what you do. They are very, very, very good at squashing rebellion. Because I'm gonna be honest with you, the second part of your argument was that they're gonna use disengagement as an excuse to move further to the right. They're
No,
gonna do
I didn't say that.
okay to as excuse me. They're gonna use disengagement to do whatever it is that Debbie Wasserman Schultz does.
Whatever they want to do, right?
Yeah, but they're gonna use any situation, no matter if the voters are mad at them, if the voters vote for them. Oh, we won. I'm
No.
still doing the same thing.
But you missed the key thing that I said. The key thing I said is it's not even about being just a voter. We have to go. This is the number one mistake that everyone makes on both sides who have problems with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party. The problem is you want to just vote and not get involved beyond your voting. If you are not in your precinct and if you're not on the local level running for positions, not for congressmen or not for any positions like that. I'm talking about local precinct captains, right? If you're not operating on that level, then they have every reason to ignore you because you're not going to show up to do anything except for vote. And they have every bit of capacity to ignore us until 2 years and 4 years out. And they've proven that. So it's not about voting. And this is what I try to tell people all the time. If all you're going to do is vote, I'm not going to tell you to sit home, but I'm going to tell you that your political revolution is really limited to every 4 years. If that all you're going to do is vote.
Okay, I misunderstood your argument.
Well, I mean, that's the other issue too. Is like when we talk about some of the issues experienced today, like polls not opening on time, limited staffing available, staff that wasn't really sure what was going on. I mean, we need people to volunteer to be poll workers too, right? Like that's such a basic thing. And I know for a lot of people, like we work and stuff, but I mean, is there anyone in your life that you know who would be able to do that? Like, we have to be engaged, not just like revolution and what's this big overarching national thing we need to do. There are like a lot of things that we can do locally that can make days like today go smooth. Like even if you're organizing, like if you have people in your community maybe who are, single working parents, right? Okay, If I'm going to go run around do all these things, the last thing I want to go do is, especially in a place that does not have early voting like New York, the last thing I want to do is go and stand in line someplace with long lines and broken machines with my kids. Like, so are people organizing to even if you organize to like babysit for a few of your neighbors for a little bit, right? Or if you go and take, like I saw people taking like an elderly neighbor and a neighbor in a wheelchair, like, I mean, there are things we can do that's just as simple as that help get out the vote. And I mean, okay, that's only like when we vote, but that type of thing helps you build community, right? Because that's something else we need to do. We need to work on building community and building engagement so that when there are time to be involved and make decisions, people feel comfortable to even speak publicly in front of others. Because some folks don't become involved because they don't really know anyone or they don't know what's going on or they're not comfortable. So, I mean, that's a little bit more simplistic and lower on the scale, but it's still, it still matters when it comes time to passing some of these local issues that we need to deal with.
Let me give you some more results coming out of New York. Right now with 15.2% precincts reporting, Hillary Clinton is leading 61.6% to 38.4%. So the lead has spread a little bit, but it's still too early to call. Someone just sent me a message saying that how difficult it's going to be for them to vote for Hillary Clinton. Listen, I'm not saying when I say I'm against Bernie or bust, I'm against Bernie or bust because what happens after the election. I'm not saying that anybody has to go against their moral conscience and vote for Hillary Clinton. I'm not going to convince you of that, and I don't expect you to try to convince me of otherwise. I have a really dedicated troll right now who is super, super pissed off because I won't sign this pledge to be Bernie or bust. I don't let people make up my decisions like that, right? I would be ornery and do the exact opposite of what you're trying to demand I do, and you guys should know that by now. I'm petty. If you try to boss me and tell me to do something, I'm very likely to do the opposite, but I digress. The reason I'm against Bernie or bust is the mindset that will happen afterwards, which is disengagement. If you decide to not vote for Hillary Clinton or vote for the Green Party or vote for Donald Trump, that's cool. What are you going to do on November 8th? Because the revolution that everyone is touting right now actually begins after this election, because this election, the die has been cast, right? We're fighting an uphill battle since day one. What are we going to do on November 8th? That's what's going to determine what this revolution was really about. And I genuinely believe that there's a level of engagement that's taking place in a community that's being built that can sustain a revolution afterwards. So if you're Bernie or bust and you decide not to vote, or vote for Green, or vote for Trump, whatever you decide, that's your business. But I just don't like the idea behind the disengage. It makes me feel that there's going to be a level of disengagement on November 8th, when we should have all hands on deck on November 8th, setting the course for 2020, 2018, and then 2020.
Here's what I want to say about that. I feel like the Bernie or bust movement in general, I don't know if the word bust probably gives that kind of like that feeling that people are going to disengage. I don't think that that's what the movement is. I think they're saying we're going to stand on these principles, or else we're not going to support you. And that's like the key a part of accountability, right? And I think moving forward, that I think Hillary Clinton will probably be the last one of these from this party moving forward.
Yeah, I agree with that. When you say last one of these, you mean the last type of neoliberal, right-leaning, moderate Republican?
Yeah, I don't think that. I believe that basically the progressives inside of the party are now going to be, moving forward, are probably going to become the stronger end of the brand. In the long term, 5 to 10 years from now, I don't think the neoliberal side will be able to maintain like its power the way it does now.
I agree, and I think it's not even. And I actually just reached out to the guy who actually started the pledge for Bernie or bust, because he wanted to come on the show and discuss it, and I wanted him to come on, and I had no intention of talking about Bernie or bust tonight. It's just kind of a natural outgrowth of the conversation. But I agree in the sense that I don't credit this to Bernie or bust, but I think it coincides with Bernie or bust that it won't happen again, right? Shame on us if it happens again, right? But there should never again be in our lifetime a moderate right-leaning neoliberal DLC Democrat who is even in the competition. That should become the pariah. That should become the pariah, because there is no left represented in American politics right now. And damn the false equivalency between the progressive movement and the Tea Party. Because first of all, I don't deal in false equivalencies, and it's ridiculous, right? And it tries to stifle the conversation. There is no left-leaning politicians in significant office in the United States, and we don't have it represented in our economics or our foreign policy. Everything is a choice between moderate and moderate right, or extreme right. And I agree with you, Nick. I think it's come down to the point where it cannot happen again. But I think if people interpret this and disengage after this election, then it's going to happen again. And that's why I'm like, if you are Bernie or bust, more power to you. I support you, and because you have the right to choose and do what you want to do. But the question is, what are you going to do after this election to make sure that this doesn't happen again?
I think kind of like, I don't know if it's just the word bust itself, because bust implies the word like, oh, let it all fall down and walk away from it. Maybe that was just bad marketing on their part. But I don't think it's necessarily disengagement. I think the actual Bernie or bust movement is just literally the part about holding the DLC version of Democrats, holding them accountable for their decisions. If you continue to vote for them, they will continue to win, and as so long as they're winning, there will be no need for them to change. And I understand, that people.
Let me jump in there. There's a different current happening that I don't think can be associated. Okay, let me take a second. There's 21.4% reporting now, and the spread has maintained. Actually, it's closed a little bit. There's 61% for Hillary Clinton, 38.8% for Bernie Sanders. I have another report right here, 70-30 for Hillary in the Bronx, and about 20% leads elsewhere. So it's going to be a
thrashing.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a long night.
Well, that's the city. Though a lot of that's the city. I know Q is saying that they're starting to come in from upstate more, but So we'll see.
Yeah.
But just think about burning your bus. Like I think that what we have to understand too is that there are actually people involved in like concerted, organized, like movement type activity, right? In terms of burning your bus. Then there are the other randos out there who are just like, oh, burn your bus.
Yeah.
And I think that I agree with what both of you were saying. For me personally, I'm somebody who has no problem saying to you unequivocally, I'm not voting for Hillary Clinton. Also, I live in Georgia, so it doesn't really matter. Whoever. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I live in a conservative southern state that does not go dim. I'm racist.
Must be racist.
No, not really. But no, seriously. So I'm kind of in a privileged position. I can say that I'm not going to vote for her because
Yeah.
sitting here in Georgia, quite honestly, it doesn't really matter because Georgia's not going blue. No matter how much anybody, Jamil Bowie or whoever else want to try and tell you it's about to go blue, Georgia's not going blue. Not in any sense of the word.
Neither is, like, in Massachusetts, it's not going red, right? I could honestly go into the voting booth and vote my conscience, and I still probably would never tell you guys just because I always reserve the right. That's the number one principle I've learned all my life. Always reserve the right to change your mind, and your vote is so personal to you. So for anyone to try to convince you to do something against your will, particularly with this election, I think is very what's the word? It's very disturbing, right? This is too personal for people. So I think yeah, okay, sorry. Just got a note from the guy who actually started Burning Our Bus. I'm gonna see if I can get him on the air. So you guys go ahead and do your thing really quick while I speak to him.
Well, yeah, I just say like Burning Your Bus, like I understand, like even though I personally I just think it's inflexible when we talk about outside of the presidential. Like, I don't have a problem with the stance people take on the presidential platform. I do think that we need to have a concerted effort to hold, Democrats, because they say our voice does not matter now because we're not quote unquote real Democrats. But come general election time, we got to unite the party. We need everybody. They're going to need our votes again. And it's like, nah, you can't disregard me. Then a few months later, like, yeah, okay, whatever, now we need you. It's not okay. But at the same time, on the flip side, like, I find that we're talking about down ballot races. For example, like, I had people jump all over me, like I was saying to you before, about Donna Edwards last week, right? I'm not endorsing anyone. Like, I'm not anybody important to be endorsing people, right? Like,
right.
but
I'm sorry.
I personally, but I'm just being serious though, right? Like, just because I'm saying something about what I read and how I like someone because I'm like, wow, and these are the issues why. Y'all can save all that, burning your bus and people who support Hillary. See, I can't do this moral, purity stuff with people, right? Like, I'm looking at someone who I think that, okay, they support it, because we have to have a real conversation about campaign finance reform and about people and their leveraging relationships to do what they think they need to do to win. Like, we have to have real conversation about these issues. Does that mean that is an excuse that I'll just forgive what people do, to get elected? No. But at the same time, I can't disregard that when you have folks in a race and they really think that if they're getting this position, it's going to, be something. But in order to be there, I got to have all these great people on my team or people who think I'm awesome to win. That unfortunately is going to be powerful people like a Hillary Clinton. You know what I'm saying? So people who may want to be Bernie or Bernie or bust or whatever the case may be, may not feel like it's politically viable for them. And I really do think that once we get to this first election cycle with many of the people that are involved, I think that we'll have more and more people down the line who are able to kind of step out of the box with, the regular DNC way of doing things and feel confident that they can actually spread their wings and run for office without having to toe the internal party line.
Something I said before, I know when I was speaking about Bernie or bust, I said the disengagement thing, but even though this may be the last Hillary Clinton type that actually makes it through the primary process from the Democratic Party, we don't even know that. I always tell people don't ever count out the right, because there was a lot of people that said the right would be defeated after Barack Obama. Look at them, they're resurging stronger than ever. But the thing about that is, even though she may be the last one, she may or may not be. I'll acknowledge that. With what's going on now with the legal doctrine changing to favor corporations to such a large extent, and those trade deals, the triad of trade deals going through TPP, TISA, and TTIP, if all three of those go go through, it really wouldn't matter too much what we have as far as representation from from a democracy standpoint, right? Because they've pretty much already, sold all that away to like a corporate tribunal that'll basically oversee multiple governments and be able to overrule, laws at the local level, regardless of what kind of action we have. So that's why, a lot of times people say things about how important this election is, and it really is, especially in the Congress and the Senate.
Yeah, we have Michael Solomon is going to join us in a second, and he wants to discuss Bernie or Bust.
Right.
I'm actually going to be
Oh, yeah.
Victor Tiffany, who is one of the people behind the pledge for Bernie or Bust. He'll be joining us second. I had no intention of tonight being about Bernie or Bust. You know what happened? This is what happened, guys. We were talking about this before a Noah show, and it just completely spilled over to this. This was supposed to be all.
But I think when you see what happened today, though, right? I think when you see the abuses today in New York, and when you see the disenfranchisement, when you see the heckling on Twitter from supposed journalists and political analysts, right? Like people who clearly have not either they haven't taken the time to actually understand the facts at issue, or they completely disregard. This is how people get to a point where they're Bernie or Bust, right? Like no, and they want to say, well, when Hillary Clinton lost in 2008, all of her supporters supported President Obama. No,
Right.
They did not. There was a significant amount of women who left the party. Barack Obama did not win white women. There's a significant group of women who supported Hillary Clinton who left and actually went and flipped and voted for John McCain, because they were just so upset that and they were within their rights to do that for whatever their reasons were. Quite honestly,
okay, go ahead.
Quite honestly, I just say that, that to me means that, she was her and McCain, my argument always was her and McCain were always so similar anyway, so that probably wasn't a far stretch for those people to go vote for him.
Wait, I was on, and I actually have Victor on hold, and Solomon is going to join us in a second, but I was on David Pakman today, and we were talking about David Brock, who left the Republican Party and came to become a political assassin for Hillary, well, a political hitman, rhetorically speaking, for Hillary Clinton. And he said the exact same thing. Lewis was like, it makes sense that if he left the Republican Party, he would come to the most right-leaning Democrat of all, which is Hillary Clinton. So it's funny when you said that, Noah. All right, so we accidentally got on this conversation about Bernie or Bust. And so until Solomon comes in, I want to introduce on the line Victor Tiffany. Victor, how's it going?
Great, Ben. Thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Can you hear me good?
Yep.
Okay, great, man. So I had an opportunity to read some of your stuff and listen to some of your interviews, and it seems like you have a very strong voice in terms of Bernie or Bust and the pledge, revolt against plutocracy. Tell me about it, and then tell me about your interpretation of the Bust portion of Bernie or Bust.
Sure. We started this last summer and realizing that Bernie wasn't probably going to get the nomination unless we came up with some innovative strategy. And the idea was to build a movement of voters pledged to either write in Bernie Sanders, and we added later on the Bust side of it, or vote Green, because there's 7 states that don't provide for a write-in option on the ballot. So we added the or Green later on. We just totaled up. We're about 76,400 pledges as of this evening, and we're still working hard to hashtag Still Sanders. We're still working hard to get the people who have taken the pledge to actually participate online in an innovative democracy commando approach that was outlined by Naomi Wolf in her book, Give Me Liberty, a Handbook for American Revolutionaries. So we're still working hard to help Bernie secure the nomination. But if that doesn't happen, then we're at the or bust stage of the leverage, and we're basically just not going to vote for a Republican like Hillary Clinton.
All right, so I hear you loudly and clear. So then what does that mean in terms of political engagement? Because that's really what we ended up. That's how we got on the subject tonight in the first place, right? The level of political engagement necessary to make sure that this type of thing doesn't happen. You know, where do those people go if they write in, if they don't vote for Hillary ends up winning, or Trump ends up winning? You know, is there a third part of this where you pick right up after the election and start working on the next election?
Yeah, well, actually, we just formed an alliance with Popular Resistance. We're going to be working after the election very, very hard to stop the Trans-Pacific Partnership. We think that's going to be introduced in the lame duck session. So we're going to be working in alliance with Popular Resistance and a all-hands-on-deck approach to stopping this horrible so-called free trade agreement.
Mm-hmm.
Both Popular Resistance has been hosting a weekly conference call on Wednesday evenings, and I've been participating in a conference call on Sunday evenings over the last year. These things, this Trans-Pacific Partnership is a Trojan horse for the imposition of corporate rules, corporate
Mm-hmm.
self-government. It'll be the end of American self-government as we know it if this thing actually comes to pass. So that's our immediate post-election project, is to make sure we do everything we can to stop that agreement. And then, of course, there's a lot of talk out there about a new third party. There's a couple Bernie supporters that are already building that sort of thing. I can't think what it's called off the top of my head. But one thing about the left is everyone has their own party, it seems like. Nobody's happy with a single progressive alternative to the political duopoly. So one possibility in 2020 would be somebody leading an American equivalent of a Syriza, a coalition of radical parties, so that, you know, all these various parties, disparate parties, can come together under one name and actually succeed with a political revolution.
My colleague Nick is on the line. He wants to ask you a question. Go ahead, Nick.
Okay. My question is two parts. Oh, I'm a little loud. Why create a new party when there's already one there that's on the ballot in many of the states? And why did you use the word bust? And I think the word bust particularly has been a focus of everybody's attention, because their talking point is picking up your ball and going home, or other people have said voter disengagement or leaving the process altogether, and that's not good. And I think they've kind of twisted that word against your original intent, which is really just that you're no longer going to be supporting, you know, corporatism. Basically, I fight my own personal battle against corporatism. I think it's dangerous and it's bad. But I think that Bernie or Bust, the movement itself, is kind of really looking at that as its focus, especially when you say rebel against the plutocrats. Back to my question: why use the word bust and why create a new party?
I think we should just focus on the Greens or an existing party. I'm not one of those people involved with the formation of yet another third party, so I'm with you all the way on that. I think we should just. We chose Or Green for a reason. They have a platform that's very close to Bernie Sanders' platform, and I think that's the direction we should go. But again, you know, we're just 2 or 3 people on the left here talking, and there's other people on the left who want to go in another direction.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to figure out some way to pull all that together at some point, because I think we could win a general election numerically if we could figure out how to deal with Citizens United and all this television and radio propaganda that's out there that most people unfortunately listen to. Now, we chose Or Bust. We picked it out of the zeitgeist. We were looking for a Twitter address, and my Revolt Against Plutocracy co-founder Patrick Walker suggested several names, and they were all taken. And he actually saw somebody in a Facebook comment on a post write down. It's going to be Bernie or bust.
Mm.
So he asked me to try that, and we were able to actually snag that Twitter address. And at the time, the pledge was called WINS. We were using an acronym, Right in November Sanders. So take a WINS pledge. And it took us about a week to realize the marketing potential behind Bernie or bust and how much that played into exactly what we were trying to suggest. And you're right. So many people in the media are describing that as staying home. But if you look at our website, the I don't know what you call it, the header of the wallpaper is the act of voting. It's somebody dropping a ballot into a ballot box. So the last thing we want is to have people stay home. I just did an interview this morning with Reuters interview journalist, and I stressed that to her. I said, look, or bust does not mean staying home.
Mm-hmm.
People in the media, left and right, are claiming, that people are going to stay home if it's Hillary Clinton on the ballot. No, we're not going to stay home. That's not what or bust means.
Let me jump in there because
we want people to vote.
Yeah, let me jump in there really quick because I think one of the things that and this is, unfortunately, we're dealing with petty people that won't go any further into the thinking of people who feel Bernie or bust, and so we have to make it plain for them. And actually, before we do that, New York Times and CNN have both called New York for Hillary Clinton. So we'll just keep an eye on the percentages by which she wins, but New York Times and CNN have just called New York for Hillary Clinton. And on the line, I'm still speaking with Victor. Victor Tiffany, one of the co-founders of Bernie or Bust, and we're just discussing the implications. And what I was leading up to before we got the breaking news about New York was the simplicity with which people try to portray Bernie or bust without any complexity. And they try to make it seem like anyone who's Bernie or bust are really just spoiled and they're going to pick up their blocks and go home if we don't get Bernie, when in actuality it's not even about Bernie and it's not about disengagement, because honestly, it sounds like complete disengagement from the system, but then listening to you, it's not disengagement, it's further engagement. It's just people who may never have been Democrats, may never have voted, they may have voted in every election and just changed their mind, they may have always voted for the lesser two evils and they've come to the point where they don't want to. There's all types of reasons where people get Bernie or bust, right? But has been belittled to being a bunch of people who want Bernie so bad that if they can't get Bernie, they don't want anyone else. What do you think about that that positioning that's been used to manipulate the message that you guys crafted?
Sure, it happens a lot, and it's very much manipulation. That's the right word. They're trying to paint us as something we're not, as just unprincipled, spoiled, you got to have it your way or no way. And that's not it at all. We are simply rejecting candidates who are going to represent Wall Street and corporate America, and that's basically everyone in the major two parties besides Bernie Sanders. I mean, obviously, if he had run as an independent, this never even would have come up. But the whole idea was to provide him with strategy, and what New York apparently has done today is chose a candidate that is going to lose in November.
The other part of that, of what I was asking, and Nick and Anoa, if you guys want to get in with any other question, feel free to. The other component of this is the opposite of Bernie or bust, which is the idea that you must comply and you must vote for, you must be a good Democrat and vote for whoever is on the party ticket. And I think, to me, that's where even though I'm not quote-unquote Bernie or bust because I haven't signed the pledge and, I'll make up my mind when I go into the voting booth, the reality of it is that there are people who are just very serious about they can't possibly vote in good conscience for Hillary Clinton, and to see people disrespect that and to see people just dismiss that, to me, is very, very troubling, because if anything else you should have the right to do, it should be to choose who you want to represent you. What do you find or not only what do you feel in terms of people telling you have to vote for Hillary, and what have you found in terms of other people from Bernie or Bust experiencing that same thing, that same type of manipulation of strong arming you and saying that you must comply and vote with this party?
Well, there's two different mindsets as far as I'm concerned. There's the revolutionary mindset, and then as far as I'm concerned, nobody who's really established a revolutionary consciousness against the political duopoly could possibly turn around and vote for that political duopoly. I mean, basically, we'd have to leave our conscience at home to go vote on November 8th. So it's a principled stand. No, I'm not going to vote for somebody that I don't support. And the flip side, we must prevent the Republicans from winning in the White House. That's a Democratic Party mindset. That would be Tom Hartman and other people out there who don't like Bernie or Bust, because they think, well, Hillary Clinton is so much better than Donald Trump. From our perspective, I don't think she is all that much better than Donald Trump. Trump is far to her left in foreign policy, and I don't like trade wars. I don't like high tariffs. I think that's a bad idea, but it's better than corporate fascism, which is the kind of so-called free trade that Hillary Clinton supports. That's what she's going to impose. So I'll take a trade war, as bad as that would be, higher prices and things like that, compared to the imposition of corporate self-government on our system of self-government.
But let me unpack that, Victor.
Against the American ideal as you can be.
I agree with that very last portion you're saying, but I think, in fairness to people who may not be Bernie or Bust, right? They may still see, I think it's a prioritization, right? People have different priorities. Like you've placed the conversation of foreign policy and versus versus a possible trade war, right? Somebody else's calculus may not be that. So I think in a sense, it's the absolutism from either side that I completely reject, right? I completely reject the notion that I have to vote for Hillary Clinton, because I'll just as soon tell them to go to hell as someone who tells me if you vote for Hillary Clinton, then you don't have a revolutionary mindset. I'll tell them to go to hell. Everyone should be free to have their own calculus to make this decision, and I think it's that force that's coming from the Democratic Party that pushes me more to throw them the bird and say, y'all go, go F yourselves. But likewise, I don't think that it is. I don't think that it is a fair assessment to say that someone who is going to vote, what about an LGBTQ person who literally is making the choice between someone who's not going to pass legislation to discriminate against them versus someone who is going to pass legislation to discriminate against them? Would you throw them also into the boat of they're not revolutionary because they are participating in this plutocracy?
This is a tactic that's been used by both sides of the political duopoly. The right does it. You don't want Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders, the people who are going to create abortion factories, or they have their right wing way of using the social issues to keep people in line with their party. So I understand where someone might be coming from, and choosing to go down the road of corporate fascism in order to protect LGBT rights. I understand that, but those of us who are Bernie or Bust simply reject that kind of blackmail. No, we're not going to take
in
your
fairness,
corporate candidate anymore just because
in fairness,
on social
Victor,
issues she's better than Donald Trump.
In fairness, though, we're not talking about just threats. We're talking about actual policies that are going state by state by state. And if you got someone like Ted Cruz in the White House, it would add an accelerant to this fire for LGBTQ rights. Like, there are scenarios that I agree with you on where identity politics is used to manipulate and keep people in check, right? We see that. We're fighting against that right now in this election with Bernie Sanders, right? I see that game. I peep that game. But I think that there are fair examples where somebody has to, and no greater example to me right now than the LGBTQ community. They are literally fighting against legislation that is being passed to discriminate and codify discrimination for them. And I just want to know your position on, do you feel like that calculus is not noble enough for them to say, I may not like Hillary Clinton, but damn it, she's not going to discriminate against me being able to get a cake from, just to use their cliche, to get a cake for my wedding, or be able to go to a restroom if I'm a transgendered person. I think some people are making a really tough decision there. So I'm in context of what I'm asking. You have people in the Democratic Party who, yes, are strong-arming other people and saying, be afraid, be very afraid of Ted Cruz, be very afraid of Donald Trump. But likewise, don't you have to give some consideration to issues that are in our face right now? This North Carolina, Mississippi, Georgia, all passing bills that are codifying discrimination against LGBTQ community. What do you say to them, if anything?
Well, people have taken a pledge, and if you're not in a swing state, it doesn't matter if, in the context of this conversation, right? You can, in New York State, we can vote for Donald Duck, we can do anything we want, and it's not going to affect the outcome. But if you're a Bernie or bust pledge taker, and you are transgendered, and you go into the voting booth, and you're in a swing state, Ohio or Virginia or any state like that, and the polls are very close, we're not going in there with them, right? That calculus is going to have to be made by the individual who took the pledge. And maybe they're, in the end, morally inclined to break the pledge in order to protect their self-interest, even though that's going to mean the end of American democracy as we know it. And it might mean President Oops War. I mean, this woman has a nasty tendency of making mistakes. She says it quite often. Oh, I made a mistake.
Disagree with that.
And I just can't imagine why and regardless of ideology, I can't imagine why any liberal, conservative, progressive, or libertarian wants a commander-in-chief who's prone toward making mistakes. But if that's your calculus, and you're in a swing state, and you go in the booth, and you're a Bernie or buster, you may just feel like, exactly for the reasons you're laying out, that at least at this stage in her life, Hillary Clinton seems to be more of an ally than certainly someone like Ted Cruz. I mean, Cruz is kind of the worst-case scenario. But you talk about fear. Let me go back to that exercise of that concern of, the other. Bernie or bust is frightening to a lot of people. It's a frightening concept because of what we're describing, and we use that fear. We in our ads, we tell, if you don't want that Ted Cruz or Donald Trump appointing the next SCOTUSes, you damn well better unite behind Bernie, because we're not going to support Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, and you know what? And this is why, for me, and I'm glad I heard you say that, because from that perspective, I don't think anyone should be strong-arming someone's God-ordained right, for lack of a better word. There's a more accurate way to describe your right to vote, right? I don't think anyone should be strong-arming it. I'm not going to strong-arm my audience. If someone is Bernie or bust, God bless you. If you're not Bernie or bust, more power to you. I honestly don't know where I am. I do know that when I get to the voting booth and Hillary Clinton's name is on there, I'm going to have a very difficult moral decision to make that I may not even tell you guys what my decision is, because it has to be based on my personal calculus, on my decision, and how I can live with myself the next day. So I'm not knocking the movement whatsoever. I like the fact that you have mobilized a lot of people to really challenge the system in a way that has never been challenged before. So kudos to you and your team for doing that. And I want to wish you guys all the best. Thank you for being impromptu. I literally hit you on Twitter like 25 minutes ago, and you jumped right on the line. So thanks so much for that willingness.
Yeah, well, I appreciate inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was all impromptu. We had no intention of doing this call tonight. We were going to try to wait, but listen, tell everyone how they can find you and find your website, and if they want to take the pledge, tell them where to go to take the pledge.
Sure, it's right there on our homepage. It says Pledge Now, and a little button you can push. It's burnyyourbus.org, burnyyourbus.com, burnyyourbus2016.org, burnyyourbus2016.com. All 4 URLs, by the way, have been donated to us by somebody who had purchased them ahead of us. And so I asked the person about it, and he said, no, I'll just play them at your website. So that's how you can go and take the pledge. You leave contact information, you'll get an email from me reminding you that the pledge has 2 parts. The second part is just go find two more people to take the pledge. There's 33% of Bernie supporters who will not vote for Hillary Clinton. So there's a lot of people out there. Mm-hmm. And if you're in a state that hasn't voted yet, you're also going to get emails from me with instructions on how to become a democracy commando.
Victor,
when your state comes up.
Victor, Tiffany, thanks so much. And the website, it sounds like you're Bernie or Bust everywhere. And then there's also the Citizens Against Plutocracy. You guys go check it out and make up your mind for yourself. Thanks so much, dude. And we'll be talking on Twitter, and maybe we'll have another conversation coming up.
All right. Yep. Thank you. So thanks again.
My pleasure. 857-600-0518. Again, no intention of having that conversation tonight. I've been trying to avoid the conversation because, I just don't like people telling me what to do any kind of way. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, seriously, I agree. I mean, that's the problem with, take this pledge. I'm not a joiner.
Yeah, I don't do well with that. I'm sorry, but I'm not knocking those who do, right? I'm totally not trying to listen. If you've ever felt like I've tried to pressure you to vote for someone you don't want to vote for, then please let me know, because I really it was something that Michael Solomon said, and I can't really remember exactly how he phrased it, but it stuck with me, and I just was like, you know what? We have to respect everyone's personal decision, and it cannot be forced, because this is a major deal. This is such a major deal that I was in a small state of depression because I honestly felt like we had no choice. In July, I felt like there was no choice. I felt it was inevitable to be Hillary Clinton, and that depressed me. That depressed me to the point where I would rather talk only about race issues and not politics, because politics was just depressing. And so once I realized we had a choice, then it actually brought me back to life in terms of my show, in terms of conversation, and actually just reinvigorated me, because the notion of Clinton and then Obama, and then right back to a Clinton or a Bush, Clinton, just that cycle of dynastic leanings was tremendously depressing. And I feel that if anyone feels that way, so much so that they cannot vote for Hillary Clinton, that's something that has to be respected. And I don't think anyone should be trying to pressure you to do one way or the other. You're definitely not going to find that from me. So if you're Bernie or Bust, more power to you. I honestly don't know what the hell I am. I'll figure it out when I go to the voting booth. 810, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, what's going on, again? This is Patrick.
Patrick, how's it going?
The thing with me is JP. So the thing with me is dealing with all this is that, again, when you hear me say Bernie or Bust, I definitely will never go back to silence again. I think one of the biggest problems many of us had is that we didn't think our voice was enough, and we couldn't find other people to have that collective thought that we've been able to do. Seth Godin in his book Tribes talked about how technology was going to help us to be able to bridge divides and find people with like-mindedness. And I'm here to let you know that this is what happened to me as I joined the Progressive Army, as I began to hang out with the Benjamin Dixon Show and support some of the other people. And I think that's what has happened. So silence will never happen. But the real issue with me is that I can't vote for that woman because I don't believe her. I think she's a liar. I know that they don't like to say it. She's a pander. And I just really believe that it really just showed the ugliness of politics.
Oh, yeah.
It has shown me the power of mainstream media.
Yep.
And it showed me how long that I have been played. And as a black man, especially from the hood, the last thing you want to be is played.
Yeah.
And I've been played. These folks have been playing me like a fiddle, and I didn't even know. I didn't even know I was singing the tune. I was literally, I was almost crooning, believing that somehow within this place it could work. And I'm telling you, it can't. And so I will tell anybody, you vote your conscience. That's what
Vote your conscience.
I think that's what you have to do.
Yep.
But I believe you need to check your conscience about who you're voting for. And I believe you need to look at all the candidates. I don't care whether they're Democrat or Republican, and the one that lines up with your value system you vote for. But yes, it may require you to do some research. Yes, it may require you to spend some time, but at least you understand. So I know some of the people who were the trustees of the universities in my town. I know a little bit about the judges. I make sure that I know about the school board militants and different
JP.
things. Yes, it takes time, but that's not I don't mean to keep on there, but please.
JP, your signal is going in and out on me. That last part dropped off on us, but I definitely get the most important thing that you said was vote your conscience. Whatever your conscience is, Nick, it sounds like you weren't totally satisfied with his response to my question. And hang on a second, gosh darn it, I keep messing you up, Nick. Now this time it was my fault. Go ahead, Nick. What were your thoughts about his answer to my question on LGBT rights?
Well, I think what is important to realize, like when you ask somebody who generally supports Hillary Clinton if they'll vote for Bernie Sanders, they're not giving up anything to vote for Bernie Sanders. He has everything she has, and then plus more, right? Yeah. And so that's why the argument is not equally weighted. I don't even like when people go back and compare Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton. They're not ideologically that far apart. Barack Obama's a little bit more cautious on foreign policy. And, I think he took some advice from people like Hillary Clinton once before, and when he was in there, it burned him, so he didn't want to do it again. That makes perfect sense. That's how somebody, who's intelligent, they learn from their mistakes, right? But the point is, they're not that ideologically, they're not that far apart. So, there's less of an argument for I would vote for this person, but not that person there than there is right now between Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton. But when it comes to the Bernie or Bust movement, what I didn't like is that he kind of almost seemed like he evaded it. He didn't really answer the question directly, and the direct answer is a person who only cares about LGBT rights, really, in essence, we need to reach out to that person and get them to understand that we can have everything if you would support a coalition. Like, you can't just only care about LGBT rights and not care about racial justice. You can't just care about racial justice and not care about health care. You can't
but let me push back. Aren't you putting now you're gonna push me. I'm gonna have to argue the opposite side now. I gotta argue the opposite side now. Aren't you doing the exact same thing and saying that putting your disgust with this plutocracy, with this duopoly party system, both are corporately owned, you're placing that above their individual rights and their right to live and exist without being discriminated against? Like,
no, wait. What I'm doing is trying to show them the intersectionality of all of those issues and why they're there. Like, no matter what you feel about it, they have not come as far as they could come forward under a Democrat. There's much more work to be done for the LGBT community. And to be honest with you, it almost seems like, like they have a little line, the wire, and there's a carrot hanging in front, and they have it dangling in front of you, and no matter how far you go, you'll never quite get that carrot. It's almost one of those issues, and I'm trying to bring them to the table and be like, hey, you will have the numbers to get what you want, if you join this coalition and we can all get what we're all fighting for. And it has to be a sense of solidarity, because without solidarity, the whole movement in general, most of it will never come to fruition. You have to have some kind of solidarity.
But that question is relevant so Bernie or bust in general is a post-primary argument, right? It's all about what happens after the primary, and it's your bet, right? You're placing a bet, and you're not going to see the river until after the primary. I'm sorry, it was a poker reference, but in reality, you're asking them about not Bernie versus Hillary. You're asking them about someone who is pro-LGBTQ rights against someone who is not who's not just not pro, but they're super anti-LGBTQ. So it's not a question between Bernie and Hillary in terms of the LGBTQ community and Bernie or bust. It's a question of someone who's going to at least protect the gains and get incremental gains, or someone who's going to outright try to codify discrimination against them. And I think at that point, it's what do you expect them to do?
Well, I mean, if the voter is one-dimensional and that's the only issue that they internalize, that's important to them, it is a personal decision. And after you've made your case, whatever they decide, it's up to them. However, what I would like to point out, though, is that by separating everybody into these single individual issues, it's the only way to ensure that nobody really can stand up to the overarching problems that we face as a nation. Because even though you may be LGBT, there are other issues that you care about, and
well, obviously, all right, it's the same exact,
and they're big.
Right. It's the same exact thing with race. It's the same exact thing with any other social issue. It's all the same. But I don't agree that it's it makes them one-dimensional. Because even the exact same thing can be applied to us, right? To me, class transcends everything. The class critique of America transcends everything. That makes me, in a sense, a one-dimensional voter, even though it transcends a whole lot.
I disagree.
The same thing to us. You can apply. You're prioritizing. All of us prioritize, and I think everyone should be able to prioritize. And I don't think we should dismiss someone else's calculus because their prioritization is not the same as ours. But this is the biggest thing: the lesser of two evils has been a farce for at least the last 35 years that I've been alive, right? The lesser of two evils has been a game. But stuff has gotten stupid in the last 8 years, such that I don't think Ted Cruz versus Hillary Clinton is really a case of the lesser of two evils. It's the case of Satan versus Satan's spawn, right? It is, you can go completely to a world that we never imagined with somebody like Ted Cruz, and I don't think people give him as much credit as he deserves. I'm not playing the fear-mongering with Ted Cruz. I'm looking at his record, what he stands for, what he has stood for a very long time. I don't know if the lesser of two evils is necessarily a farce in 2016. It was a farce in every other year leading up to this point. But have you ever seen somebody who is more conservative than Goldwater, who is more religiously zealot? He's a more religious zealot than Jerry Falwell, who is,
that's extreme.
He's politically shrewd, almost like Clinton. He's not as shrewd as Clinton, but he's better than anybody else that's running on the right now. This guy has the capacity, the motivation, and the wherewithal to wage a holy war inside of America. And you really want to tell me that the lesser of two evils is not relevant in 2016?
Well, I think that this is where we get into the accusation that Bernie supporters are privileged voters, right? Like, in general, I disagree with that, assertion. But when we're talking about, okay, well, we just need to stick to our guns no matter what, and we can't vote for any of those people ever because we have to change the system. But I think that there is something to be said when you do have somebody like a Cruz who is running and who could potentially be president for the next 4 years, and possibly making Supreme Court, appointments like
years.
There are really serious, and then right, what if he runs for re-election. I mean, it's just all types of stuff. I don't like my thing with Bernie or bust is I don't believe in these ideological purity arguments, right? Like I disagree with people who tend to be so inflexible in their moral purism that we can't see the possibility to work with anyone else. Okay, fine. You don't like the mother hen, but that doesn't mean that some of her little chickadees aren't like people we could work with as well. Like I said, like I understand about the movement itself and listening to Vincent talk, okay, that sounds great. This is wonderful. But I'm not really interested in oaths of fealty. I do pledges and oaths and things like that. Like personally, I don't, because that's part of me being independent, right? Like I am able to go as I see. I do agree with what Nick is saying, though, about we need to have strong coalitions to work on several sets of issues. But at the same time, I'm not going to chance certain things with somebody like a Ted Cruz. But then at the same time, I'm also not willing to do what needs to be done to make sure that Hillary Clinton would beat him. So I personally find myself in a moral conundrum, right?
Yeah.
It's just, this is a crappy time to be a voter like me who I'm not going to suck it up and take one for the Dem team. I'm tired of hearing that, but at the same time, I'm going to let this group over here tell me that I have to come take this pledge and do this thing, which is not necessarily what anyone's saying, but at the same time, it's very complicated. And I think that's what I really just want more people to acknowledge and realize, that voting, it's not just like, oh, well, they're bad and we're good and we just need to vote for the good guy for our team. And it's like, no. All of the stuff that has happened in this primary, I can't just hold my nose and go vote for Hillary Clinton. Like, I just can't do that. I can't vote for a third Bill Clinton term. Like, I just can't do that. Like, and everybody can say, well, no, I'm not voting to put Clinton and Clinton back in the White House. Like, I'm not doing that.
Here's what's so funny about what you just said. Like that, you had a dialectic in your brain just in the last 30, 60 seconds that you've been talking, right? You argue two sides of something and you're trying to bring some resolution to it. And that's what I go through every single day when I think about, could I possibly put a check by the name of Hillary Clinton? And it is so much more complicated than, in my opinion, an overly simplistic, rah-rah, sis kumbaya, go for our team, vote blue, unite blue. No, kiss my ass, go to hell over there. And it's so much more complicated than, oh, if you're not Bernie or bust, then you're not a real revolutionary, kiss my other ass cheek and go over there, right? It's so much more complicated than that for me. It doesn't have to be that complicated for you. It can be simple for you. It's not. Right. Because there's a lot at stake for a lot of people, and I am in a very privileged position where it really doesn't matter who's going to be president for me. It matters who's going to be president for someone who's LGBTQ, for people who are impoverished and actually need economic reform to change their lives. It
matters to me.
It's going to matter to people who are brown internationally. It's really going to matter for them. Probably more than it's going to matter for Americans, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of people who may not be directly connected to me that are depending on my vote. And so I can't just take a overly simplistic view of what I'm going to do when I hit that voting booth, because to me, it's not that simple of a choice that I can just sign up for the Team Blue and go with Team Blue, or sign up for a pledge and say, to hell with all of you. I don't know. I'm making up my mind as I go. Go ahead, Noah.
Yeah, no, like I agree. I was just saying it matters to me because the Ted Cruz hates federal government employees. We saw that with the.
Now you're getting pulled back.
That would actually kind of cause me like an existential crisis, right? Come election day.
Yeah.
But again, I'm in Georgia, conservative red state.
Yeah.
She's not winning the South. So let's just be real. But I understand though. But I do appreciate this notion that we do have these issues, regardless of who is president, regardless of what's going on. We do have these issues, like the trade trifecta, which Nick shared an awesome video, which we need to share again. He shared in the chat the other day a great video about what is at stake, not with just the TPP. But with the other ones that Nick has mentioned as well, like there are these issues that we do need to have this movement of people coalescing around. And I do like, though, that you did ask Nick about why go make another third party, right, when the Green Party already exists. I mean, there are a lot of different parties on the left, and it's just kind of like, okay, let's go make a new party. I mean, we did have a coffee party for a while. Like, that didn't really seem to – I mean, Well, I mean, I think we have all these really lofty ideas, but instead of looking at what is it that is the issue in terms of party politics in America and trying to figure out how do we then work with that, we want to go run off and create new things. Like Nick and I probably just need to schedule a debate about this, but Nick and I keep going back and forth internally about the Green Party and whether the Green Party is a viable option, right? And
Go ahead, finish that thought.
Go ahead. I was just going to say that I think that is a conversation, though, that we should be happening as a part of all this other dialogue going on. Jill Stein jumps on all the different Bernie hashtags and tweets and stuff, but is there a viable option for us within the Greens? I mean, I think that's a very valid conversation and point that Nick has brought up several times as well. So, Nick, me and you are going to have to figure out.
Let me pull something up, and then Nick, I'll throw it to you because I'm sure you got. Dr. Q mentioned that it's hilarious that I'm arguing with you over you're a liberal living in Texas, and you have had to deal with Ted Cruz longer than I have ever had to deal with Ted Cruz. It's just hilarious that I'm trying to convince you that Ted Cruz is the devil. Like if there's ever been a devil in American politics, it's Ted fucking Cruz, and we cannot let him get off. But I digress. What is interesting to me are the exit poll results from New York on honest and trustworthy. Sanders polled at 82% of being honest and trustworthy amongst Democrats who voted tonight versus Hillary Clinton, who polled at 60%. There is a tremendous disconnect that's happening in voters where you are actually quite literally voting for the person that you feel is less trustworthy than her opponent. How does that happen? Either one of you, feel free to jump in.
People are voting for the system we have, not the system that we're trying to create.
I think the problem comes into, I think for a long time, progressives have given up the battle for the hearts and minds, especially starting with kids. Like in school, there used to be these things called critical thinking sections where it tried to teach you how to think outside the box. There's no rules on how you're supposed to do it, but they just want you to think about a subject and write something down and back up whatever you thought with critical points. They don't teach anything like that. It's something that the teacher is not supposed to structure. It's not like top down. It's something born from within the child and their personality. And I think that's for the large sense has been lost. Now, if you look at the schools, they teach the children to just absorb and regurgitate with no real thought outside the box until they hit college. And even then, a person's personality is set pretty early on.
But this happening, and I don't know which time frame you're saying had that, and if this, I don't. But it's just happening with old people too, who had different models of education than we had. It's like how do you honestly look at yourself in the mirror and say this? And I think you hit it. Actually, I don't have to regurgitate the question. I like what you said, that people are voting for the system we have instead of realizing this was an opportunity to change the system.
Well, I think especially when you see what is already happening in New York, when you have the mayor, the governor, the AG, when you have, and I actually had an exchange maybe about 2 weeks ago with Nomiki Coates on Twitter about how corrupt New York State is. I was like, more corrupt than Chicago? I mean, that's like the worst machine. She was like, girl, do you have people who have had ethical violations? New York is insane. So when you have like these people have lined up hand over fist, like I said, when you talk about all the displacement, like my aunt, like I had to beg my aunt earlier today to go vote, and I know I'm going to get a call from her tomorrow, like, see, I told you so. They already had it figured out for her. A lot of people just sat on their hands because the rich are going to do what they want to do anyway. You know what I'm saying? So it doesn't matter what we little people have to say. I mean, my aunt has lived in the same building for like 26 years in Harlem and has watched her neighbors, our friends, our childhood friends and stuff be pushed out all around her. So like when people like her have watched the opulence in New York take over and push people out and destroy any type of agency community members have, I don't necessarily blame them when they're disengaged, but
Yeah. Let me tell you help you involved. So a couple things. I want to keep the line open for a couple of key people. But the stupidity from the media, if there's ever anything that would make me, I would say, I would want to see the media, the Democratic media establishment, I would want to see that fall. That's something that I would want to see fall and be replaced with actual progressive media, because you got people like Paul Krugman. I'm just reading a tweet here sent to me. Thanks, Susie, on Twitter. This is Paul Krugman just tweeted, another conservative deep South state for Hillary. Hey, somebody had to say it. So, little shit bags like this. Yes, Paul Krugman in this tweet right here is a little piece of crevice crack shit with this stupidity, right? Because they're trying to, not trying to, it's post, right? It's already happened. They've done this from the beginning, where they have manipulated the narratives every step of the way. This has been about the media. This has been about identity politics. This has been about every which way they could ever keep us from considering a candidate that actually wants to bring economic populism and challenge this two-party system and challenge this corporatocracy that we have in America. And the media has been co-conspirators with this every step of the way, particularly the Democratic media, the black media elite, it just all across the board. And if anybody is a problem, the bigger problem than just Hillary Clinton is all of the people surrounding her, all of the people enabling it, all of the people who are spinning the webs of deceit and shoving it down our throats as if we are the crazy ones, when we can peep exactly what they've been doing all along. Those are the people that I would like to see just disappear. Blue Nation Review, all of these people who are just the henchmen of this system, they have done a disservice, a greater disservice to progressivism than Hillary by herself. It's her team. And it's all these people that are empowered and that would be further empowered by her being elected. So I said all that to say, if anybody can make me Bernie or bust, it's these stupid shills in the media that really need to disappear.
Yeah. They this is completely off topic, but this is just an example of just how idiotic and how the vitriol in the media amongst themselves, right, is like very difficult. Very difficult.
You got somebody in the back over there?
My daughter came in the room and she's watching the show on her phone, even though we're sitting here talking. And then anyway, look, the kids apparently were a hit at the high school, so
we'll take it. Get it.
Apparently we're a hit with some of the older kids who were upset that they didn't know that they could have registered to vote down here so it's been a lot of stuff like that going on. That's when I feel like, I can't vote for this existing system, because there are people who are just now like finding out information like, man, really? That sounds pretty cool. I would have liked to vote for somebody like that. We're not going to get another Bernie Sanders presidential run. I mean, not to make age digs, but this is not going to happen again, right? Like, this was our shot, people. And it's not over, because you know what? We got Pennsylvania, Delaware, Connecticut, Maryland. There's a whole slew of states next week, too.
They don't realize we are going to keep giving you hell. Even if Hillary Clinton gets 2 terms, we are going to give you hell. I don't know about y'all. I'm going to give them hell every step of the way and do my part to bring that apart. So it's like, we're not going to just fall in line with anybody. I don't think they realize that's not how it works for me, at least. Go ahead, guys.
I want to say, I think I was trying to get to the point where we've lived in an age where the expectations and the redefinition of what liberalism has been force-fed to people, and there's no real critical thinking about any of it. And I think I kind of went off on a tangent, but that was my point I was trying to bring back. I sit here, and I know this just seems like a waste of my time, but I have people that I speak to every day that are firmly in the Clinton camp. But when I talk to them, and then I talk to other people that share 180-degree ideological difference, I try to establish things that are, what's the legal term for facts that everybody agrees upon before you go before the judge? Okay, these are the facts, and these are the facts that are in dispute,
stipulated.
Right? There you go, stipulated facts.
Agreement.
Stipulated agreement, right? So car accident, 2 cars made contact, that's a stipulated fact. So the point is, when you try to do that, you'll see that the difference between somebody like myself and somebody from the right, we may agree on something, but a Clinton supporter won't. And then I'll agree with something with a Clinton supporter, but they won't agree between the person on the right. And what it is it's almost like almost Orwellian, I think, because I say we have corporate corruption, and the person on the right agrees with that. But when I mention Clinton, the person on the right, they just don't like Clinton, but they agree with the evidence that you'll put forth before them, right? But then the person on the left who's a Clinton supporter, they will bend over backwards to say that Clinton has nothing to do with that. She's not corporate. That's just all a right-wing attack. And then on the other hand, if you mention climate change, all of a sudden, the person that's a Clinton supporter, they readily agree with climate change. And then the right-winger says that's all just made up, blah, 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 blah. So we're all dealing with almost like a different set of facts that we're all operating with. And it's not something that you can really debate minds with on easy terms, because in order for a debate to work, we all have to agree on a certain set of facts, and then we kind of dispute about either the conclusions you draw from those facts or something else. But you can't be there telling one person the sky is blue, and then another person comes and says the sky is green, and another person comes and says the sky is red, and none of y'all will ever agree that the sky is one color or the other.
That is, that's a product of the right propaganda machine that has been so effective over the last 35 years that we now no longer agree on fundamental truths. Like, we don't agree that the sky is blue anymore, right? That's something that if they wanted to challenge, they have conditioned their supporters so much that they could actually quite literally challenge that notion. And that's really problematic. But I don't put that on the right alone. I put that on a left that has been kowtowing to that type of propaganda, because they've been fearful of unleashing the force of progressivism, because they know progressivism is going to challenge their DLC, moderate triangulation, neoliberalism politics. So they've kept all their strong voices at bay as long as they could for their own self-preservation. And in that absence, in that power gap, you had the Rush Limbaughs, the Sean Hannitys, all the rest of them just push America to the right end of stupidity, to where now there's no fundamental truth that they can't challenge, where we could at least have a starting point for a decent conversation.
But guess what? You can't blame that all on the right, because the point I was saying is this also exists on the left. And that's my point. You have people that will say Republicans are corrupt because they take too much money from big businesses. But then somehow Democrats aren't corrupt when they take money from big business. Now, Republicans may take it from extractive industries, and Democrats may take it from high tech and large financial institutions. But the money, if it's corrupting on the Republican side, it would also be corrupting on the Democratic side. And there's the disconnect there. And just because there's no, somebody meeting with somebody in Denny's exchanging briefcases of money, and you can prove some kind of quid pro, they're just a little bit smarter with it. They just don't get caught with their pants down, right? Obviously, not every Republican does either, because that's illegal and they would be up on charges.
I mean, no doubt on that. I mean, no doubt you have. I think that's the level of political ignorance that no one wants to admit exists inside of their own ranks, right? There's a level of political ignorance and unwillingness to find out more for fear of what that truth is going to reveal to them. That's what you get in all these cases where people can honestly believe that the campaign finance will or contributions will not pervert Hillary Clinton, but it's going to pervert everyone else. It's this willingness to go the extra mile for their team, to believe that their team is pure and that everyone else is the devil. It's not just political. It's almost religious zealotry, right? It's everyone is evil except for my chosen candidate, and that never allows them the moment of reflection to look in the mirror and say, yeah, I've got some messed up crap in my calculus too. And that's just how America is played. That's how we've played politics in America for a long time. That's how religion goes in America. That's how, hell, relationships go. It's not even America. It's human nature. It's like a fundamental human nature characteristic where we are going to stretch ourselves to keep ourselves from ever having to admit to ourselves that there's something wrong with ourselves. And I really didn't mean to say it like that, but there you go. Who got next? Who's up?
Go ahead.
I know it.
I just hopped in the chat room and somebody said, "Well, I really hope the Democratic Party gets out of the habit of trying to throw up basically historical firsts to cover up all the corruption. You know, first black president, first woman. You know, what are we going to have next? You know, first Asian. You know, on and on. And I not that I necessarily think that it's a cover up, but at the same time, I do think that's goes into the conversation we've been having. You know, mentioned it. Rania mentioned it when she was on last week. You know, we're hiding behind identity politics. We're leveraging identity politics in a very dangerous and negative way without addressing the real issues that actually keep some of the difficulty and differences like persisting. Like, okay, everyone's excited. We're going to get a woman president. Especially there are all these black women who have lined up and will stand for Hillary Clinton harder than like anyone in their own family. But like that does not really trickle down. You know, that does not trickle down to us. Her experience, her opportunity. Like, listen to her talk the other day about her work with Mary Wright Edelman and the Children's Defense Fund. It's like, dude, you did it for less than a year. Like, that is not, I mean, that's not anything considering all the time you spent, you know, working as a labor busting corporate lawyer for like representing Walmart and Monsanto and all these other organizations. And we get so blinded by the fact that we need to have this person who fits this, you know, identity thing, right, that we want to provide for, that instead of just looking at who would actually be the best candidate on these issues that actually impact people's daily lives. And I have a problem with that, which goes back to why I feel like, I mean, if Ted Cruz is the candidate, it's a different conversation, maybe, I don't know. But I don't really understand why. Someone else said progressives tend to overcomplicate things. Like, I just need somebody who's going to be about the business of making my life better. But at the same time, what I realize is that no president and what they're doing is, with the exception of Ted Cruz, who might get rid of my agency, I don't know. But there's nothing. There's nothing that any of them do, like Obama, right? Like even George Bush, like all the years going through school and stuff like that. Like, I'm not going to say things were great, you know, for me under George Bush, but it wasn't like I had a foot in the grave or anything like that with him. You know what I'm saying? Like that was difficult for my life. I'm not old enough to really remember the Reagan years. I just remember we were really poor in the 80s, but I'm not old enough to remember that really in any meaningful way. But I really do think that what we all do need to realize is, regardless of who is president, we all need to be involved in the process to whatever extent we can be, whether it's, and not just the 4-year election cycle. We need to be looking at getting people involved in congressional elections and their local state elections, city council. I mean, there's so much that's happening up and down. You know, we're talking about local, state, and national politics. Yeah. We need to help people.
And you know, that's the biggest thing for me is there is, I swear to God, if every single one of you watching my show, as well as people who catch this in 2 years, everyone who made the pledge for Bernie or bust, all of the Bernie Sanders supporters who've never been Democrats in their life or whatever, if you politically disengage, whatever happens after that is your fault. Our fault. If we politically disengage, that it is on us. That doesn't mean become a Democrat, but that means you better figure out a way to fight them. If you got a problem with them and you don't think that they're a solution, then damn it, you better help the Green Party get more than 5%. You better do something besides sit on the sideline and complain until the next election cycle. That's number one. But then number two, a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I mean a lot of people watching my show, y'all are wasting your time trying to convince me that Ted Cruz is not as bad as Hillary Clinton, or vice versa. Actually, reverse that. You're wasting your time trying to make me think that Hillary Clinton is worse than Ted Cruz. And when I talk about, I'm trying to give you guys some space to be who you want to be. You have to understand, one thing I'm very good at is reading people and knowing people. And I know, just the way you see Hillary Clinton, a lot of you guys see Hillary Clinton as the devil. I see Ted Cruz as the devil squared, right? I see Ted Cruz as the worst thing that could possibly happen to the United States of America, because he's going to do everything that you fear Hillary Clinton doing, double. If he can make this more neoliberal, laissez-faire, cut taxes as low as he can, he's going to do that. Neoliberalism on heroin. That's what he's going to do. Foreign policy, he's going to be just as hawkish. He's going to blow up more people because he has this religious jihad, this Christian jihad that he wants to wage war. So you can't convince me that Ted Cruz is somehow going to be easier on America than Hillary Clinton. And you don't have to. I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, but I'm just telling y'all, Ted Cruz, I know him. I know people like him. I know where he comes from. I know exactly his attitude. I know his motivation. I know that he feels that he's more right. He thinks he knows this thing better than Donald Trump thinks he knows The Apprentice. And Ted Cruz, to me, is far worse a threat to our normal everyday life than anybody else running. Now, you do whatever you want to do. I ain't got to convince you of nothing, right? I'm not gonna try to tell you to go vote for anybody. I haven't done that, but don't try to convince me otherwise either, because this is everybody's personal decision. And I think once we start crossing over into demanding people see it our way, or demanding people to vote for our politician, or demanding people not to participate, or demanding people to go for green, you're crossing over into a personal space that you're going to get exactly what you feel when somebody's trying to tell you to go vote for Hillary. So I think if the moral of the story is, if you are Bernie or bust, be that. And if somebody isn't, let them be that, because their decision-making calculus is totally different, and they have a right to have it different. Now, you go try to convince them all you want, and that's perfectly fine. But one thing you'll never, ever convince me of is that Ted Cruz is not a greater threat than anybody else running for the White House right now today. Take Hillary and multiply it by 2.
Yeah, and just a difference. Like I really do think that there needs to be a conversation about what is the strategy, though, or what are viable strategies for people before everyone just starts going out there doing random things. Like I see, again, I just popped in the chat room, to talk about I'm just going to write them in. Like, in some states, you have to declare to be a write-in, and if you're not declared write-in, even if everybody declared, decide they're going to write him in, and he wasn't a declared write-in, they would just throw all the write-ins out. Like, it wouldn't count, even if he won that state, right? So, in only certain states you can do write-ins anyway. So, like, I really do think that, like, having a conversation, but I'm not even there yet, right? Like, that's the other reason why I think that I don't, like, agree with Bernie or bust. For me personally, like, I really do think that while voting is a choice that we all leverage, but at the same time, I really do think, okay, it doesn't really matter that it's impossible for Ted Cruz to win a nomination, like, whatever. But
wait a minute.
I mean, nothing is impossible.
But hold on a second. It's really almost technically impossible for any Republican to get it. They are going to a contested convention. Ted Cruz is snatching up delegates, people who are committed to.
And Rubio's not letting his go.
Rubio's not letting delegates go, so Rubio can come back from the grave, which actually be a godsend in terms of what's offered on the Republican side right now. Hell, I think anybody would take a Rubio over Cruz or Trump. But the point is, are you guys not paying attention to what we talk about on this show? Ted Cruz has delegates who have already said as soon as they get past the first voting round at the convention, they are going for Ted Cruz. Like, seriously, what are you guys watching on TV?
But seriously though, like,
Let me get this caller real quick, and then I'll let you get it. Caller, thanks for your patience. What's on your mind?
Hey, Ben, it's Bryce.
Bryce, what's up, man?
Hey, what's up, everybody? So I do agree with you. Sorry about that. I do agree with you about Cruz. Like, he's just the worst. Like, I know about Hillary, and I don't want her to win, but I'm gonna be honest with y'all. I'll vote for Hillary because Cruz is gonna cause all types of hell, and Hillary, I'm not saying she got her issues, but she's not Cruz. She's not going to do, the crazy stuff that Cruz would do, or even Trump in a sense. So I'll take my chances with a Clinton and Cruz. And Rubio, maybe he might try to get back in. But Bernie, there's difficult laws, tough laws, but basically, I feel it was rigged. I feel like the establishment got what they wanted. But it's still, Bernie still can do it. Still some big states coming up, so it ain't over
What's the
yet.
final percentage?
But
what's the final percentage? Let me go back. I'm sorry for cutting you off. Bryce, go ahead and finish your point, because you said I just want to see what the final breakdown of delegates are going to be out of New York. Right now it's 57% for us, so there's a 15. I'm sorry. I know. Sorry, guys, I don't mean to laugh, but damn, that's a 15-point margin right now with 80% reporting. That's a pretty big loss. Bryce, I don't know if you had anything else you want to say before I disconnect you, man. What's up?
Oh yeah, but he still can get it done though. Still a little more time.
Yeah.
Still not over yet. But yeah, I do agree with you though. I can't. I gotta vote for Hillary if Cruz is the guy they choose, because I just can't. I can't be here with Cruz or Trump as president. The stuff that they'll do, especially Cruz.
Yeah.
I just can't. I just can't.
Yeah, man. I understand. I definitely understand that. We got 14 minutes. I'm going to go to the top of the hour, you guys, and then call it a night. Nick, you've been a little quiet, but I want to say this. What do you guys actually this is, I guess to me, this is why I'm indifferent on, not indifferent, what's the word? So not voting for Hillary ain't going to change the system if she gets in office. Cruz getting in office won't change the system. It's just going to be the same, just on cocaine, just hocked up on crack, right? It's just going to be a system out of control. Nothing is going to change until we change it. Whether or not Hillary's in office or Ted Cruz or Donald Trump or even Bernie Sanders is in office. Yes, the system is rigged, but do you understand it's rigged with rules that people have made? And maybe there's probably a lot of underhanded stuff going on too. But the biggest thing we've been fighting against is a lot of people not being aware of the rules or fighting against bad rules in the first place. And I'm saying, like, if you going to change this system, it ain't going to change by you being Bernie or bust or voting. Right? It's not going to change. It's going to change by you getting in the system and bringing hell to them every day, showing up to the meetings that nobody else wants to show up to, being at the meeting when it's just 5 people there. Do you know that there's power in that meeting still? But most people want the glamorous, the big nationwide thing. And I'm saying none of that matters at this point. The only thing that matters is, are you going to rig the system with your rules? Or are you going to keep complaining about the system being rigged with somebody else's rules? I don't care really about what's going to happen at this point, because the system is so broken. We have to change it. A protest vote is not going to change it. It's going to help you live with your moral conscience, with your conscience, and that is something I respect and honor, and you should do that, right? Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying to try to convince you to do otherwise. What I'm saying is that is not the end all to be all. That cannot be the end of the conversation. That has to be the very beginning of the conversation. And so long as you agree that no matter what you're going to do, you're Bernie or bust, or you're going to vote, or you're not going to vote, or you're going to vote for Trump, whatever you decide, so long as you promise yourself that you are going to get involved and change the system so that we're not playing by rules that we don't agree with. We can change the rules for ourselves. And with that, I'm going to give it to Anoa. And then, actually, Nick, you've been the most patient. Go ahead, Nick, and say what you got to say, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree at this point the primary focus should be the electoral system itself. Like in each of these places, the electoral system is it's very, very bad. It's actually exposed a lot of flaws and weaknesses. And, you know, as somebody who works in the technology field, what I can tell you is the more technology that's involved with voting, the easier it is to actually tamper with the results. This is one of those situations where the less technology you have involved is actually better. Like less machinery, straight paper ballot, hand counted, multiple eyes on there, and verified by exit polls. That should be the standard in America, just about everywhere. Universal registration. The primary system should just, shouldn't be closed and open primary and all that. None of that stuff should be there. It should just be, straight paper ballot, hand count it, multiples, verify with exit polls, with legal recourse if it doesn't work out.
And get rid of the 2-year primary system, for the love of God. Can we condense this down to 2 months? Can we condense it down to even a quarter, 6 months? But we run the primaries so long. And what I'm saying and everything that you just said, Nick, are things that can be changed on a state-by-state level, starting on your local level, getting enough political power to actually make this system change. But if you're waiting on somebody to come from an outside force, listen, I love Jill Stein, I love the Green Party, but I swear for God, they are not. You maybe we should have this debate.
We're gonna have this discussion.
If you're waiting on them to do it,
we're gonna have this discussion.
Yeah, we'll have that discussion. I think Nick believes it could happen. What do you think?
He does. We've had this. We went back and forth internally about. That's what I'm saying. Like we kind of are in semi-agreement that this is a debate we do need to have about Green Party, as the viability of a Green Party for an option for progressives, as we're talking about electoral politics and stuff. We definitely need to have that conversation. But I do think that regardless of what anyone decides to do, whoever you decide to finally go on that booth for come November, we do need to. They're saying that we need to call Victor back because everybody needs more clarification at some other time. But we need to have a follow-up conversation with Victor because we need more clarification about Bernie or bust. But I do like the general premise of what he was saying. I do like what Nick and I have gone back and forth about too. Like there are certain issues, and what Nick was saying tonight. There are issues. There are things that we need to make sure that we're mobilizing and organizing around. Because regardless of who is president, like a lot of the foundation, like people were saying, well, marriage equality is real, and Obama did that. Obama didn't do that. Let's just be clear. There are activists, there are organizers, there are individuals who are willing to put themselves on the line to be test cases in these different lawsuits, who were able to organize and really, energize in their various areas to mobilize. And then we finally ultimately change public opinion, and then, now we have an option. Now we finally get to the point, 10 years, however many years it was later, where we now have. Well, I'm criticizing Obama, but I'm not dogging or attacking his character. It is a difference. He was on the right side of history. And if you're a leader, that's the best thing for you to do is be on the right side of history. Several of these Democrats just a few years ago were it's between a man and a woman, blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden, everyone's in favor, and they're not going to, interfere with people's right to marry who they choose. Because that's where the popular opinion has been. There are enough people who put in the work and built up that movement, right? Now we have a similar issue starting to happen when we talk about transgender rights in this bathroom issue, which is really a deeper issue there, right? People just want the right to deny people access to public accommodations and businesses and things like that. That's really where we're going with that stuff. So I do agree that regardless of whether you're Bernie or bust, whether you see Hillary as a viable person to vote for, if Bernie does not make it, regardless of what you see, we have a need for a strong social movement around whatever the core values are. If we're going to force the Democratic Party, like if we're talking about Bernie, if Bernie is not the nominee, and we're talking about we have all these things that we care about, and we're going to force the Democratic Party to be accountable to this platform to the best of our ability, so that by the time we have our next election cycle, we're in a position to get a candidate in who actually adheres to these, whatever it is, we got to keep working, right? Even if we have to build that movement regardless of what that looks like.
Even if we force them away from the left, right? So it's not even about forcing them to change as much as it is forcing them away from us. Like, move on, because we have irreconcilable differences. And I think that's what we found in this election. Like, we just don't have anything in common anymore except for maybe some social issues, and you still have Democrats voting against some social issues. So, I think we can do one or two things in the next election cycle, which is, and remind me to mention this last thing about Victor, because I think I know what the chat room's talking about. We have the ability to draw the line and simply say and demonstrate that we are so different that there's no reason for us to be underneath the same tent. However, we have to do that with strong enough numbers. Here's the problem with yes, it's my beautiful wife comes in from we'll talk anyway. Here's the problem with Bernie or bust, in the sense of what Victor was saying and the actual organization and the movement that's going on after and the part 3 of Bernie or bust. It sounded like there's in 3 phases. I understood exactly what he was saying, and I'm very happy to see that they have it in 3 phases. They had Still Sanders, Bernie or bust, and then they're going after the TPP. They're organized. How many people yelling Bernie or bust online are actually even cognizant of the 3 phases of Bernie or bust? And that's the reason I'm so harping on it so much, because a lot of people are using, despite just hearing what the platform actually is, that there's actually 3 phases, that it won't go away. There's a lot of you who ain't know about that until I just brought him on the show. There's a lot of people who never heard about this, and Bernie or bust to you actually represented disengagement. So don't front on me. Don't keep it 100 all the way around the board. There is a structure there, fine. Cling to it and run with it. But don't act like you guys all had this master plan where if this part doesn't work, then we're going to do this. And that's what we need more than anything else. And I'm sorry if I'm yelling at you guys and I'm yelling at myself. I'm just yelling all the way around the board, because it is a necessary thing for us to organize tonight for the rest of our lives. And so many of us haven't been able to do so. But now it's time, like JP said, to use this technology, to use the community building, the capacity that we have to grow this movement, so that in 4 years, it's not even a question of whether or not the Democratic Party has to listen to us. It's you either listen to us or you completely move away from us, because our numbers, we got to get our numbers up. We got to get our numbers up and our organization up so that we can make demands that can never be ignored.
Let me say something about that. In order for that to be viable, we have to break the mindset. Like, even for people that are open to different things, acknowledging a third party or moving away from the Democratic Party is just a bridge that even some of the most erudite people cannot cross. Tom Hartman is an example. You watch his show, and I don't know if anybody watches it, but it is very, very educational. Like, if anybody calls in about a book or an author or they quote something, Tom is on top of it. He's an avid reader. He knows exactly what they're talking about, and he can summarize and even correct the caller half of the time. That is how much of an erudite he is. But he's still, even after all that, he's still binded by, we have to work within the 2-party system. That's just the way it is. And the problem I have with that is that mindset is why we are here where we are today. If we didn't have that mindset, we could definitely do something different, because the way people have been voting the lesser of 2 evils, it has facilitated a situation where it has grown to where it is today.
I agree with that. I think that's a cop-out. I think that's a cop-out, and it abdicates our responsibilities as people on the left and the far.
Well, I'm not abdicating any responsibility.
Hang on. No. Actually, there's quite a few people who have abdicated their responsibilities as leaders from the far left and from the left in general, because there's no such thing as a far left in America anymore. They have abdicated their responsibility to organize, and they've taken up the platform of criticism. And criticism is good, but if all you're going to do is criticism, you're not building anything. And so some of the most ardent voices have been great at critiquing, but never have done anything to organize. So as much as it may be problems of people like Tom Hartman who understand the problem but still comply with the 2-party system, where are the people that are actually organizing in a significant fashion on a state-by-state, local, and on a national level to actually solidify a movement that can actually bring that type of change? So yes, there are people who cower before the 2-party system, but at the same time, where is the organizational structure, and who's doing it on a consistent level outside of people who are just criticizing?
Well, historically, that organization has come from the far left parties, intelligentsia in the universities, the Socialist Party, the Communist Party, and the labor unions. And basically what happened was that coalition was destroyed by the right in the aftermath of World War II. So those were our organizations right there. They got destroyed by the right, and that's what helped facilitate where we are today. But trying to say that that's a cop-out is kind of ignoring like what actually happened to those people. You know, that coalition, just like the multiple coalitions inside the Democratic Party right now, They were separated and defeated.
Are we really, Nick, going to use what you said, which is a factual point? Are we really going to use what happened post-World War II, particularly what happened in the 60s with the labor unions being gutted, right? Are we going to allow something that happened 50 years ago still cast our lot for the next generation, right? We're in a different age with different technology, with different opportunities, and where is the movement that's operating inside of this technology, inside of this age? We were set back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and in the 80s, they just ran over our asses. Are we still going to let that cast our net for the next generation? I don't think that that's a good excuse.
Well, I'm not making it as an excuse. I'm just offering an explanation as to where the organizational effort, why it's not there, and it's because it was destroyed. We have to build it back, but in order to build it back, we need certain structural things to be changed, and those things are not at our advantage right now. We really do need the labor unions to be empowered, and we really do need to separate, basically the universities. We need to separate them from corporations. We need to actually increase civic awareness among children and in individuals, period. We have to beat back an ideology that's been propagated for almost 50 years. We're trying to change that overnight. Now, the millennial generation right now is living with the results of all those things, and they're rebelling against it. They really are. We really are. You see with our generation, we're the first generation that doesn't have any loyalty to a workplace. We don't really care about corporate this and corporate that. Yeah. That is gone. And that's just one small, kind of like a result of living with all those consequences. Now capitalism is not a good word like it used to be. Liberal is not as denigrated as it used to be. Progressive is not as denigrated as it used to be. Socialism is growing in popularity. People have an increased awareness of how things work around the world. Even American exceptionalism is being called into question with this next generation. So the wave is coming. Now, what's happening right now, it really is just to stall it. But we have to understand that the tactics that worked in the past will not work quite the same right now, mainly because of what I said. The infrastructure has been destroyed.
Exactly. But in your explanation, and I agree with you like 99% of everything you just said, I agree with you. In your explanation, it was almost the chicken or the egg. Like, is this movement going to be built once we get this problem fixed? Because that problem is never going to be fixed if we're going to wait for it to be the solution itself. We have to birth something brand new based on today. We can't wait on the labor unions. We can't wait on any infrastructure that failed in the past. They're going to have to come after it. And there's going to be, one thing you said is so true, it's the millennials, man. It is the millennials who have completely rejected the ideas that have been forced on us since birth. And you have to ask yourself, how was it that we saw this system and rejected the system when people who lived outside of the system are fully the ones embracing it at this point? Like, there was a time before neoliberal trickle-down economics was even a thing, and now you have people who actually lived pre-trickle-down and post-trickle-down just embracing it as if it was the best thing since sliced bread. But you have the millennials who are born dead smack in the middle of it saying, hold on, this is not what we want. So it's the chicken or the egg. Where's it going to come from? I think it's going to come from, like JP said, it's going to come from community and connectivity, and we have that opportunity here. We just have to capitalize on it. When I say here, I mean on social media and through the internet, just our ability to connect in Atlanta, in Texas, and in Boston, and all of us yell at our cameras and say that there's something wrong and the system is broken and we got to find a way to fix it. And with that being said, I'll let you guys get the last word. 30 seconds each, and we're going to bed. Or I'm going to bed. I don't know what you're going to do. Go ahead and know it.
Yeah, so just real quickly, tomorrow is a new day, and everyone needs to help phone bank. And if you are in Delaware, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and I can't remember what other states are happening next week, because there's like 4 or 5 states next week. Lessons learned today, yay. Hopefully you've learned better information, Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, all the different numbers and stuff. Stop sharing the bad information about voting. Get out the vote, because regardless of what the numbers look like, it doesn't really matter. We're going all the way to the convention. If we're talking about having an ability to build a movement, to sustain this movement, to continue to engage people, we have to continue to be engaged. We have to recruit more people to be involved alongside with us. So No matter whether you're going to be Green Party after this or whatever you're going to do, we have to keep this movement going long term.
Nick?
I was going to say, you make it out that I'm making the argument for the chicken or the egg. I'm going to tell you right now, the chicken and the egg, the chicken's already here. We just need a conduit for that chicken to actually pull the levers and do something. After being here. Being here is not enough. 90% is showing up, right? But the other 10% is actually, working the levers and doing what has to be done. And that's where we're kind of lacking there. We need a conduit. And we just need to either build one, find one, make one, do whatever we need to do. But that's what we're lacking. And I'll end with a quote from Eugene Debs. I think they asked him at the end of his career, they asked him, what was your biggest failing? He goes, well, in our Constitution, the American people can have whatever they want. My biggest failing is that I feel like we settle for so little. I feel like I failed to make us realize that we have settled for so little. Right now, people are okay with whatever that's given to them, and they don't understand that we have the power to have whatever we want.
That's an awesome quote. I will close with this. Whatever your decision is, it is your decision. It's not something for me to change your mind. And whatever my decision is, it's my decision. It's not for you to change our minds. It is so personal. It is yours. And you have the autonomy to make that call yourself. Don't be pressured by a political party. And don't be pressured by a pledge. Whatever side you fall on, that's your choice, and you can tell everybody else to go to hell because it's your choice and your choice alone. I will see you guys tomorrow.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Crazy mother.
If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.